Welcome back to Bread and Butter, where we are serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement. This is episode 131, and as always, I am joined by Pilot. Pilot, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and we have a very special guest today. It is Saltman. Saltman, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you guys?
Very good. We appreciate. We had a little scheduling snafu tonight, and we were planning on having Saltman in the future, but he was willing to come on tonight, so we definitely appreciate that. Salt, what have you been doing inside the game of Hearthstone lately?
Just prepping for playoffs. It's a lot harder than it seems, especially in this meta. So just a lot of prep.
Very, very nice. Anything you've been particularly enjoying on ladder? I know a lot of the pros are complaining about the meta and a lot of non-pros as well. I'm not having a problem with it, but that's because I've started to embrace control, I guess. How about yourself though? What have you been playing on ladder?
Yeah, ladder is pretty harsh right now. I'm not a control player. I'm very much a mid-range aggro player, and Blizzard seems to hate me. And everyone else who plays aggro in mid-range. So it's definitely learning a new play style. And once you get really comfortable at a play style, even any player who just plays like there are people who's very good at control. Take Pocket Train for example. Nobody's better than control at Pocket Train. Um, yeah, so it's just trying to catch up to the pros who know how to play those metas, and it's hard. Um, but I'll probably be cooking up something spicy for playoffs just to suit myself. So we'll see.
Very nice. How about yourself, Pilot? What have you been up to in Hearthstone?
Trying some decks because I'm kind of in the same spot to where I've started to play control, had more fun than I thought that I was going to, but I was starting to get tired of 30-minute games when I was running into mirrors. So I've been trying out some new decks since the patch. I have played, what all have I played here? I'm pulling up. I've played a lot of, it's classified as Big Spell Mage. It's not really Big Spell Mage. It has Skyla, it has Tsunami, it has Huddle Up, and King Tide. But it's really Tempo Mage, and then you have sometimes you scam out a Tsunami, but normally you play Slither Spear, you play Sizzling Cinder, you play the 3-drop that makes the first spell cost 2 less, and then you just burn them down with fireballs and stuff. That deck's been a lot of fun, and it's very much my play style. I'm like 12-2 with it. I think No Hands got that list started with a video, and it's kind of spread from there. Been playing a little bit of Quest Druid. It's okay. I was doing better than I thought that I was going to, but it's still a little hit and miss. Had some fun with some Nebula Shaman, which is Murmur without Murmur, and then a little bit of hand buff Death Knight with Undead and Puppeteers. So I've been having some success. I took it as a chance. I'm like, these decks plus a couple other aggressive look kind of okay into what I'm expecting this week for THL, because I played against McBanterface. And then I was really distracted this morning when I was playing. I just could not focus. I don't know. I just wasn't super focused, wasn't playing my best, and got, absolutely beat down. So I took one game where I started to play a little bit better, had a shot to push it to 5. And then I don't remember what it was. I needed a good top deck, or he piece together lethal, something like that. So it's what it is. I mean, it's McBanterface, so I was already at a disadvantage there, being me and not him. But played okay once I got back into it. Then I know Tito and I have played a little bit of duos with the new season. Have no idea what we're doing. I have no idea what half the new cards are still. I know what cards I don't like to see. I know I'm tired of hearing the rally sound effect already. Every single time it happens, the little horn, yes. And a little bit tired of Quillbore. So we'll see what happens with that. Beasts seem to have been toned down a little bit already, but that rally will probably get hit as well when they do a balance patch. But there's a lot of new stuff there, and quests are fun.
So I also had THL match, and I played somebody named Sunk Q. Sunk. I call him Sunk, but I don't know if it's Sunk Q. I wish I had a clarification on that. I think we think it's Sunk. Anyway,
Yes.
I went 1-3. He's also if you don't know him, he's a innovative deck builder, and he's usually a top, I think, 100 player. And I went 1-3. I should have won one game. It was a interesting matchup where he was playing control DH. I'm sorry, he was playing Control DK. I was playing Starship. We were both playing Starships, and I was playing Starship Warlock. And I made a very aggressive wheel turn early because I figured out that, hey, well, maybe I can get there. I had options. I had, I believe, ceaseless. I had a starship on board. I had ways to deal with things. And I thought I had there. I'm like, wow, I pulled this one off. And then I just couldn't deal with him on the last turn. And I'm looking forward to reviewing that game because I think that game was winnable. Um, but it's starting to when you play these games, I mean, even if there's some, you have to play perfect when you're playing against some of these players, but they're definitely winnable. And one of these days, we're gonna have a win against somebody like a McBannerface or I don't know, maybe Saltman. Saltman took me 2 and 3, but I thought we played some pretty good matchups. I kind of stumbled on the Owl Druid because I'm still getting used to that deck, um, but yeah, so what have you been doing? But as far as anything else, I've been playing the Huddle Up guy as well, and still playing Cinder Shaman because I'm on the rank D5 floor, and I got to turn around and make a push. But I've also been playing Sidisi's Beast Quest Beast Hunter, which has been really fun. I sent it to a friend of mine because he's like, I don't like this deck. I don't like this deck. I'm like, here's a deck. And I sent it with the tweet that Sidisi said, hey, I made it to legend. And then he's like, would you give me this? Because he got rolled in his first game. He's like, oh, maybe this is okay. I went to 5-2 or something like that. I'm like, all right, good. Maybe you found something you like to play. And then he messaged me the next day. He's like, you sent me a 43% win rate deck. I said, no, I sent you a deck that somebody made it to legend with, and I thought you might be interested in. But Salt, what have you been doing outside of the game?
Not too much, just with playoffs coming up. But weekends I spend with my girlfriend, and we just play pogo. Uh, but yeah, it's just been ever since making playoffs. It's just just Hearthstone basically 24/7 until end of playoffs.
Yeah, my son wants to go to the Pokemon Go thing in Boston in a couple weeks, and I'm like, well, maybe we'll see. But I mean, I'd like to go, but it's also it's a day, and we'll see how that goes. Pilot, how about yourself?
Played a little bit of Lorcana. Didn't make any more set champs this weekend because I just didn't fit in the schedule of stuff I already had going on. But one of the stores I was able to make their weekly league because I'm in between bowling leagues. And had some fun there. I played a Sapphire Steel deck with some of the. It was a not quite a full tribal deck, but using some tribal stuff in there with allies, and it was better than I expected it to be. I filled it with just a bunch of overstated, annoying cards and a ton of draw, and I just kept cycling through my deck constantly for like 7 turns until I eventually won. I'm like, okay, this has some legs. I'm like, I'm gonna want to play with this a little bit more. I just haven't had time to play. Partly because I had a concert that I played in on Saturday where I normally play with a community band around here when it fits up my schedule. Hadn't really been around all summer because of marching band and stuff. And then the other guy who normally plays trumpet with me, he was out of town on the day the concert was supposed to be. So they called me up and just like, hey, can you fill in? Here's a brutal set list for you to play by yourself with 2 practices. We made it. My face is kind of recovered. But I was feeling it. I was feeling it yesterday. So we played like a 1-hour concert, and it was just brutal. It was one where we would have been trading off a lot. As far as other games, been playing Blueprints still. Still have a little bit of an idea what I'm doing with that game, but not a lot. Still kind of wandering around and trying to find what I'm supposed to take notes on, and trying to discover most of it organically. There's been a couple times where I've gotten to where I look stuff up on the wiki less for like an answer to a puzzle, but it's just like, is this a puzzle or am I overthinking this? I'm at that point of the game. So thankfully the wiki is full of spoiler tags and stuff. So it doesn't pop up automatically. And then I started Avowed today at the request of Torby Funderson. He had posted in one of the discords about a bunch of games that he had just finished playing. It's been on my list to play, and how he described it, I'm like, oh, that's definitely the type of game I need to play right now. So it's basically like a smaller version of Elder Scrolls. I'm like, yep, I'm going to start that before school starts, and I have some time to sink into this. So it's been fun. So far, at least.
Fair enough. And for the patrons, just let us know if you would like us to upload the VOD of Dizzy Gillespie here playing at his concert, and I'll see if we can make it happen. Oh, he says no.
No.
Well, we'll try. We'll try. Um, I've had a pretty quiet week. We just did it rained all year on Saturdays, and I go home on the weekends and Saturdays. So I have been catching up on yard work, and it is like a never-ending process. And normally the stuff that was done in spring is done in the summer, and you got the weeds and things just never always keep growing. So just been working on that. We came down and visited my parents today. Went to Newport Creamery, which is a lot like a Friendlies. But very, very quiet week, just working. Yeah, and I'm working on I guess I'm working on a little bit of a video game too at work, so it's been kind of fun. It's been a nice little project while I'm waiting for some things to kind of shift around. So that's been interesting. We're using some C++, we're using some Lua, we're using some OpenGL. So it's been a good time. It's stuff that I enjoy. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Saltman. Saltman, how did you get started in gaming, and how did that lead you to Hearthstone?
Yeah, I got started when I was like 13 playing Halo on my Xbox with my friends just before we had any good internet. And then high school came around, started playing League of Legends because my other friend got me into it. And then I don't know if you know who High is. He's a League pro. They all started playing Hearthstone beta. Their whole little group, they started playing Hearthstone beta. That looked really fun to me. I got into the beta, and I've been playing on and off since high school in there. And then yeah, that kind of took me into college, and then I top 16 TESPA where I lost to A tiers, which is the collegiate scene at the time. And then I got a full ride on Hearthstone at Harrisburg University. Yeah, so that's kind of where my journey has taken me so far.
Wow. Full ride. I wish I would have been able to do that. I had to join the army and go overseas, and that still didn't even pay for everything. But yeah, Hearthstone sounds like a lot more fun. It's always fun too when we have people on and they're like, "Yeah, I've been playing this." I was in college when they invented the internet or when it became popular. So it's like, you know,
Yeah.
but so you've made a pretty big jump the last few months. You were basically a top 1,000 player. Now you're a top 100 player. What do you think got you there?
Uh, yeah, so I changed my name. I went from Saltman 112 to Saltman. So it doesn't have a lot of my old records. I've always been a top 100 player. And then Stormwind
Hmm.
came around, and then I quit. Stormwind, I hated it. And then the game kind of went to where I didn't want it to go. And the esports scene was kind of dying. That's a lot of the reason I play. I like competing. I like doing that, which is how I found THL. A lot of my friends that compete in THL. So I got into that. But yeah, I've always hovered around top 200, top 100. Um, but yeah, it's just a lot of it is prep, coaching. Um, I had Freshka as a coach for college. He was our coach for our team, if you know who he is. But yeah, so it's a big push. But coming back once the esports scene got announced again, definitely made me want to play again. So that's why my numbers look a little weird. I came back. I entered at like 4,000, and then it took me like 2 weeks to get anywhere close to top 1,000 because of how the ladder works. So it took me like about 3 months to get to top 100. So I missed out on the first playoffs, and now I'm basically in peak form. It's obviously dipping a little bit right now, but that's probably just stress from playoffs and all that. So
So so you get there on points. Were you participating in any of the qualifiers or anything? And how's that been going?
I played qualifiers just to test decks. I didn't really play it for experience. I didn't want to waste 16 hours. I didn't have to. So I kind of just skipped them. I played a couple matches and then just dropped because there's no point.
Fair enough. Where did the name Saltman come from?
I've had this name since I was 12. I used to put salt on everything. So that's just kind of where I was. So that's just kind of where the name came from. I've had it since since I was about 12. But yeah, it just kind of stuck with me and I like it.
So were you Salt Boy back then, and then when you got to older, you became Salt Man, or was it always Salt Man?
No, it's always Salt Man. It's kind of a play on Spartan from Halo. Is where I found it. And then the 112, it's obviously Spartan's number. But yeah.
Oh yeah, obviously, I knew that.
If you're a Halo nerd, yeah.
I've probably played Halo once. Any of them. Just never really. I never really have consoles like Wii and stuff like that, but never of like the PlayStations and whatnot. So you said, oh, what do you guys say?
No, I said that's fair. I just grew up on an Xbox and then I eventually got a PC and I've never left it. So completely fair if you didn't grow up on a console.
No, no, I did. I just grew up on yeah, I grew up on the NES, and I did have an Xbox One, but, nothing well before the Halo days. So, what's your favorite class, and what's your favorite deck of all time?
I get asked the class one a lot, and I don't actually have an answer. I just play whatever's good. Uh, I think I like Druid the most. I like mana ramping. That's just always fun to me. Is being able to cheat out big stuff before your opponent, and then making them answer it. My favorite deck of all time is Q Block. That was super fun. I've always liked the charge minions. Uh, Old Leroy, super fun. When Leroy was 4 mana back in the day. Um, but yeah, no, Q Block is super fun. I like cheating a lot of Doom Guards and just hitting people in the face.
Nice. I played a lot of I think the most aggressive deck like that I played was the, Paladin, right? The Hand Paladin, because you had a lot of
Hmm.
options for Resh at the end of it. That was a lot of fun. Um, so you used to stream a bit, but you haven't in a while. Did you like streaming? Why'd you stop? I guess you stopped because you haven't been playing Hearthstone, but where's streaming in your life, and what do you think about it in the future?
Yeah, I love streaming. It was super fun. I ended actually in college. I didn't have time because once I got my scholarship, I moved across the country. I went from Washington to Pennsylvania for that full ride. And then we're spending 8, 10 hours a day practicing on top of schoolwork. So it's really hard to find a time to stream. So a lot of our time was just into basically while we're practicing, we're doing homework on the side, and then we go to classes, and then we sleep for like 4 hours, and then do it again. We played a lot, and it kind of showed. We were always like top 10 collegiate team. We always ended like top 5 ish until playoffs, and then we always got high rolled. But that's Hearthstone. But we definitely just practiced a lot. So yeah, that's just kind of it. I didn't have time to fit in streams when we're just grinding all the time.
It does sound a lot like my college experience. So I would go to classes, I would play video games 8 to 12 hours a day. I would sleep 4 hours. Might have been a little more drinking in there, but, yeah, so that sounds like college.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so in TESPA, did you have any particular matches or, that were very memorable to you or that you were proud of, or anybody you beat that, you always remember?
Yeah, beating Noblord, way back in the day, if you know who he is. Noblord is a big one. We beat him when he was at Rutgers. Beating the Utah team when they had Ryder and a bunch of other big people. We always lost to Always Just in Time when he was on Northeastern. He's always the one who high rolled us. They played really well, but they also got super lucky. Uh, but yeah, it's just fun. My most memorable is I wasn't even a legend player yet, and I made top 16 in Tespa, and then I played Yay tiers, and that was a very humbling experience. Once you play somebody who's a lot better than you, and you can tell they just do things that don't make any sense to you, but they just win, and then you're like, wow, I lost, and then you go back like because you think you got high rolled, and you go back, you watch the VOD, and sure enough, they just outplayed you. Yeah, it's very humbling and it's nice. Those are what I play for. I like getting humbled and learning and finding ways to improve myself.
So you just said you were playing in TESPA and that you weren't even a legend player yet. So if you weren't a legend player yet, how do you get a free ride to play Hearthstone?
The month after I hit legend, and then the month after that I was top 200. So I went from being a Diamond 5 player in the old system. Uh, so I was like rank 5 ish in the old system, and then I went from about 4,000 legend to top 200 and over in just a little under 2 months. Um, so yeah, I did it really quickly. I got coaching from Luker, and all that did was he basically just confirmed what I was doing, and I just need to put in more time. So I put in that more time, and then yeah, all of a sudden I'm just top 200 player.
Fair. I had a coaching with Meaty when I before I hit legend, and he just basically said everything I knew already. But it was just kind of like reiteration that I needed to think about things again. We got there. Um, so what do you think it's gonna take to make it to the Masters Tour? Do you think you got it this time coming up, or like you're already a top 50 player, top 100 player? What is it going to take for you to get from where you are now to start getting into the main events?
Uh, a miracle. I mean, it's 2 people out of probably like I think it's 60 people are making it. Um, I mean, at the end of the day, you just have to draw well. When you especially when you're at this level of play, it comes to lineup making. If you can make up a really solid lineup that beats the field of what you're expecting, and B, you just have to draw well, which really sucks to say sometimes, but everyone's playing probably near perfect. They'll make 1 or 2 mistakes, but those 1 or 2 mistakes may or may not cost them the game. So at the end of the day, it's just going to take a miracle for everyone, not just me. Even Banter if he plays, or Pizza, or whoever. It's gonna be a long 16-hour day of just hoping you draw well.
And that's something I think we talked about a little bit last week, where it's like when you play, like if you're playing against someone much better than you, then it doesn't really matter. They're probably going to outplay you. But when you're playing against somebody that matches your MMR or close to it, then the chance definitely comes into play a little more often. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Who are some of your favorite streamers? So you mentioned a lot of people you've coached or been coached with or played against and all that. But who are some of your favorite streamers or pros that you've watched that maybe have shaped the way you play?
I watched a lot of Kibler back in the day. Kibler and Toast are the two that really helped me learn the game. And now it's Pizza. I watch Pizza all the time. Good friends with him. Talk with him a lot. So yeah, Pizza is definitely one. He explains his turns really well. So does Banter. If you ever watch his streams, or anyone, if you want to learn, Banter and Pizza are two that can explain things very, very well. And if you can kind of get away from their condescending, like, oh, I got high rolled, like, and you can kind of see their plays, it's really good, and you can learn a lot.
Nice. Yeah, we've talked to Banner before. I think No Hands is also really good like that. As far as someone that goes through their plays and helps you learn. There's plenty out there though.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, Pilot, we get any news this week?
We don't have any new news, but we have a lot of news that we didn't cover last week because we had so much to talk about. So we're going to get into it this week. We had the 33.2 patch last Tuesday, introduced the balance changes, introduced the new BG season that we talked about. There are a bunch of events that are coming up. So we have we have Umbra's Uprising event that's running from August 5th to the 26th, where similar to most of our 3-week events, you earn the event EXP. It is giving a free card, Staff of the Endbringer, which is a Death Knight legendary weapon. It's a 3-mana 1/5/1/6. I had it in front of me.
1/6.
1/6, thank you. With Death Rattle, destroy all minions. I was trying to look to see if it was any decks, and it did not have enough stats in a single deck. So do with that what you will. But it's giving that 4 Ungoro packs, 4 random epics from the expansion, as well as a King Bone Crusher Death Knight skin, and then also a golden version of the weapon. And then as soon as that is over, we also have the annual Fire Festival event. That is a 1-week event from August 26th to September 2nd. It is giving 2 tavern tickets, 2 Ungoro packs, and 1 golden Ungoro pack. That's obviously a shorter track since it is 1 week. And normally that one comes with a lot of skins and cosmetics that they have with the Fire Festival every year. Then we also have a couple of brawls going on. The Heroic Brawl is going on right now, and might be finishing up right as you're listening to this, or right about. Is running to August 13th. Our regular disclaimer of if you're playing for the rewards, don't, unless you are regularly a very top legend player. That is where you have the gold entry fee. It's 12 wins or 3 losses, and those 12 win rewards look really good until you go 3-3. So I don't know if have either of you guys played any of the Wild Brawl. I don't play Wild pretty much ever.
I have
Yeah, I
not
don't
touched
play
it
Wild.
yet.
All right. So they'll probably go to Born to be Wild to figure out info about what decks to play there. Or, like I said, if you're not confident that you're going to win a lot, probably don't sink your gold into it. And then
Also recommend go to Schmoopy Daddy's stream,
Yes.
because he'll talk a lot about it, I'm sure. He's great.
we also have then right after August 13th or 20th, they're doing a dual class tavern brawl. It is a standard brawl. You'll pick a primary class, and that'll give you what your hero power will be, and then you have a second class that you'll be able to put cards into your deck from. So similar to Taurus, but you have all of their standard cards open to them. I have not thought much about this because I don't know how much I'll play it anyways. But have you guys thought about playing it or anything that you want to play in that or any deck ideas?
So, what do you think?
I haven't. No, I've
figured.
literally just been in standard.
I've been thinking about it a bit because it's. I don't plan on usually playing the brawls because I don't need to. I get the cards, and that's the kind of funny thing about these brawls. If you're good enough to win the brawl, you probably already have enough cards, or you don't need the rewards. So it is what it is. But the dual class brawl is really interesting because they used to have dual class arena, and that was kind of limited to whatever pools are offering you in this, but this lets you kind of think outside the box a little bit and think, hey, what two classes could be broken together, and you can do it in a way that could be a lot of fun. Just so you know, we Pilot mentioned Taurus. The one thing that you can't play is Taurus. Taurus are banned, so you can't have three different classes. You're not getting there. So there's a lot of things you can't do. You're not going to be able to, because if you think about some of the decks that you could combine, and you're like, oh well, I could play warrior, and then I could play couple muscle, but not if you're not actually bringing in warrior. If you're playing hunter or whatnot, so there's a lot of things to think about there. It could be interesting with some of the quests and how maybe there's some synergies going there. I don't know. I think there's a lot of fun ideas. I mean, you get Shadow Step. You can think about all the things in other classes you could potentially Shadow Step. Um, Maybe you could mix something up with like Owl, Owl and Mage could be fun. Finding some ways to do a lot of spell damage there. I think it's interesting. I think it's fun. I'll do it probably at least. I think we should get the free one. Normally we get a free one. I think. I don't know if we will
I
this
don't think they're
time.
doing rewards with this. Let me check. I think this is just a regular. Yeah, this is just a standard. This is just
Oh,
a regular brawl. It's not the
oh,
runs like the wild is a heroic tavern brawl.
oh. Okay. Well, so this is not. You
This
just
is
do
not
one game and then
competitive.
you
Yeah,
against somebody. That kind of stinks. Because this, I mean, I guess it makes sense because why would they run two brawls in a row unless they're really, really, really trying to get you to spend your gold before the mini set comes out? But I mean, that just sounds like fun, right? Like it's something would be different. It sounds like something that should be a twist, right? Something in twist.
if only.
Um, oh, you could play. You could, if you want to do this, you could play Buff Hunter without Gilly, so you can make it so you never have to draw Gilly.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll be the power level that's happening there, but I've seen. I was just scrolling through some other people's ideas. I saw using resuscitate with priests to bring back a bunch of starship pieces. Druid and paladin with spell damage and Lanessa.
Lanessa, no Lanessa, she's a tourist.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Okay, I didn't. They might have said that doesn't work. Never mind. I missed that. And then charging pirates with demon hunter and paladin, so you have crusader's aura and just get them.
Yeah,
It'll be goofy.
we'll have to do it at least one day. One stream, check it out, see how it is. So, what's our main topic today, there, Pilot?
So our main topic today, we're going to focus in on game plans and matchups. So whenever you go into a game, obviously you want to figure out the best way to win that game that you're in, and that has a few components that you have to consider. You have to figure out the general game plans of the decks, or as a lot of people call it, the win conditions, the matchup between those, and if and how you might need to deviate because of those interactions between those. So with the game plan, with both decks, you need to start to figure out what kind of role you're going to fill in the game, kind of like what we had talked about a little bit earlier, to where are you the aggressor? Is it is there a controlling style deck? Are you focusing on burn? Are you focusing on a swing turn like hand buff hunter? And then trying to figure out what your opponent is doing as quickly as possible also, so that you can figure out how that interacts with what your opponent is going to do. So you have to you look at those different things, and a lot of those come with reps and knowing the meta. I'm using very vague terms on purpose because we'll kind of get into that a little bit, to where aggro and control are going to end up being a little bit ambiguous depending on the matchup. But what are you guys typically kind of looking for when you're trying to start forming that game plan? And then obviously you're using that to inform your mulligan decisions.
Go ahead, Salt.
Okay, is this for ladder, or are we just in general?
In general,
It's
fine.
it's different
very
between
different for
ladder and like open list and
Yes.
ladder. So I'll just go ladder because that's what a lot of people are playing. Basically, you look at the class, right, that you're going against, and you just have to make your informed decision of which one's your worst matchup, and you mulligan for that one. And then that kind of sets a precedent, because once you start seeing your opponent's cards, then you can basically make the inference of what they're playing, and then that dictates who's aggressing and who's controlling. So like if you just take like Starship DK versus like Armor DH, the Starship DK needs to be the aggressor, because eventually that Armor DH is going to kill you. So once you basically figure that out, you'll start launching you'll start tempo launching, you'll start doing a bunch of other things, and then that's your aggressive plan. And then the Starship DH will just be reacting. And yeah, so it's just a lot of back and forth, which makes control matchups super hard. So when you play control mirrors, it will always change. It could change every turn, and I think that's what makes Hearthstone really fun and really hard at the same time. Is you have to figure out where you're at in the spot of the game, and your top deck or your draw can change how you play the game. So it's just there's no real right answer. It's just being able to make correct decisions, and you may or may not know what that is at the time, until you play a lot of games or you're in those scenarios a lot. But yeah, that's just how I see it.
I think for me, a lot of the time when I start a game, when I'm actually playing well, I will look at the game and I will see whatever I'm playing versus what they're playing. And obviously in ladder, you don't know what their deck is going to be, but you can infer, you got to take a kind of a guess based on what you see most with the class and what they are. So you, like right now, a paladin could be drunk, it could be imbue, it could be quest. But I think that for the most part, maybe you'll see, like if you're seeing imbue more often, you have to make that assumption and say, hey, I'm seeing it imbue, and you're playing what you're playing, and you have to be like, okay, in this matchup, how do I win? How do they win? And then you got to say, well, will I have time to, and it doesn't have to be your win condition. Like if I'm playing Wheellock versus Murloc Paladin, or I think they're Murloc Paladin, like I'm not getting to wheel. That's not probably going to happen because they're going to get bigger faster and they're going to punch me in my face. And if I have wheel in hand, or even if I played wheel, it probably doesn't matter. So you have to kind of think like, okay, in this particular matchup, what do I need to do in order to either beat them or stop them until I can get to my power turns? I talked a couple weeks ago about a THL matchup that I lost where we got run over, and it might have been you, Salt. Were you playing hand buff warrior? I mean hand buff hunter?
No, I was not.
No. Okay. I forget who I played. I think I might have won this game. I won
Yeah.
the series, so it was whoever I played a couple weeks ago. And I just kind of assumed, hey, I'm gonna lose this game because it was like a 30% matchup and stuff like that. But if you think about it, and if I would have kind of processed it more, the way I would have won is to try to keep them off the board early until I can get some starships launched. If I get some starship launch, they only have so many threats, and then if I can get to that point, then I had to survive until I get to my mid game, and then my mid game was going to overpower what they could do. So it's not typically how you win with those matchups, but it's like how you win with that deck. But in that particular matchup, you have to approach it differently. So I think that's kind of where I try to take approach from. When I'm doing well, I ask, how am I going to win this game, and how are they going to try to beat me with that? And how does that match up, and what does that mean for me? How do I advance? my plan.
Yeah, and like Saltman mentioned, this is obviously very different if you're playing in, a open deck conquest because you know exactly what cards are in your opponent's deck and you don't have to guess what, type of Death Knight or whatever they are, and you can start to really make those more informed decisions right away. But ladder, when it comes to ladder, I always like to, unless it's such a widespread popularity percentage, typically if you're not sure, you always want to guess that you're facing the faster archetype first, because if you plan for the slower archetype as faster, then you're dead before you can fix it. If you plan for the faster, like if it's a know aggressive priest versus a control priest, if you plan for aggressive as control, you have some time to get it fixed and kind of get the cards that you need. Generally, not always, but generally speaking, it's a little bit safer if you're completely not sure. Obviously, you can use popularity in general, what you've seen in your pocket meta to figure that out. I also like to think in, when we're looking at, like, is it aggressive, is it control, is it something that relies on a swing turn, kind of the range of turns that those decks are wanting to do whatever their thing is. Because there is a difference with, for more aggressive decks, just looking at some of the paladin decks right now, there's a very aggressive token one using Crusader's Aura and Flash Sale, and all these common and rare cards that just flood the board. And then there's also Murloc Paladin. Murloc Paladin is going to be a little bit slower to get going, so I don't have to be as worried turns 3, 4, 5, but I do have to be worried once they get that second quest tick, and now everything has +2/+2, rather than needing to watch out for a Flash Sale or Crusader's Aura, and kind of knowing the general range of when those decks want to do the thing, similar to Hand Buff Hunter compared to a Cycle Rogue. They both have a big swing turn. When those swing turns happen, can be very different. Obviously, Hand Buff Hunter's wanting to do that as early as possible with a discount or only having one minion in hand. Cycle Rogue was relying on drawing enough cards to get the Giants discounted, and normally had 1 turn, 2 turns after kind of Hand Buff Hunter was coming online. And knowing those things lets you game plan a little bit ahead and then figure out what your role is in the matchup, which takes us to our next point. Of once you have a general idea of what your opponent's playing, then you've got to figure out how do our win conditions relate to each other. Because if you're both playing aggressive decks, typically one is going to be faster than the other one. If you're playing the slower one, you have to do something different to win the game, because if you just go, I'm playing my game plan, theirs is going to happen first, and then your face explodes first. Some aggressive decks have more burst or more burn from hand. If you're playing control, I think what Tito kind of mentioned already, which control deck is able to last longer, which control deck has a way to end the game more on the spot, like a Wheel Warlock. If you're playing against a Wheel Warlock as control, that eventually you have to become the beatdown, and different things, like that in various matchups. So, excuse me. So, Tito, once you've figured out, you kind of already talked about some of this a little bit, but once you've figured out generally what you're playing, how are you evaluating the matchup as you go?
You have to, obviously, the first thing is kind of like what you're mulliganing, but I think we talk about that. You may not mulligan the same way that you would in most matchups, depending on what you're playing. The paladin you were talking about is really kind of a good example of how you kind of have to change your mentality, especially if you're playing like an aggro deck. Like if you're playing something like, say, a Menagerie Priest, and you're playing against that paladin, you're typically, maybe you're wanting to, or Protoss Priest or something like that. You typically want to, like, do your aggro thing, punch them in the face, and not to worry about their minions. But if you don't kind of keep their board clear, all it takes is really like one turn, and you're getting smorked for like a million damage. So in that case, you have to say, all right, well, I don't necessarily need my more aggressive tools. I need tools that are going to keep me off the board, keep them off the board. And then I have the value with maybe my imbue and whatnot to you repackage them, they're done. You do anything like that, and you're going to win that matchup. So all you have to do is make sure they can't have enough minions on board in order to play that Crusader aura and just roll you down. But in any other matchup, depending on what clock, it's kind of like figuring out what clock you're on. And if you're playing against, say, a quest warrior, you want to, with an aggressive deck, get there and maybe even be more aggressive, because once they start getting to their turn five chemical spills and they start getting the minions down in your way that you're not going to get through, then your game plan is pretty much over. So I think it just really comes down to not just tunnel vision on what your deck does. It's kind of keeping an open mind to, okay, where can I go with this? What can I, and it might not even be that, it'll come down to like, hey, normally I save this card until I can combo with another card, and that's kind of like, but it may be just like, hey, I have an Oracle, I'm gonna play it on four, without a spell, because if they clear it, they clear it, but that's damage not going my face. And if they don't clear it, then I can possibly get the tempo I need to take advantage of that matchup. So that's one of the hard that is, I think, the hardest thing to do in Hearthstone, honestly, is to play those cards without the value. I have a thing, it has a spell burst, it has a battle cry that I need something else for. I've won matchups before where I've tempoed out that stupid ooze that I didn't even ooze anything, or not the ooze, the one that copies, it destroys something and then brings back another copy at the end of the turn. I've had matchups where it's like I've played that just by itself, and that's won me the game because I was able to get enough damage in before they were able to do what they wanted to do. How about yourself, Salt? What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is where one trick players like Jay Alex have a lot of like up against everyone. They know their deck in and out because they've probably played thousands upon thousands of games as that deck. So they know where they can deviate and where you can basically play very differently. And then that makes your opponent question a lot of things because, hey, like my opponent's not playing normally. What do I do now? Um, but yeah, it's just a lot of, you just have to evaluate the game state at the time and your hand, and if you can draw. I usually go through a checklist. The first question I always ask: do I have lethal? Try to figure out lethal. If I don't, what's my opponent's next best turn? And then from there, once I figure out my opponent's like the best possible play my opponent can make, is where I make my play. Um, like a lot of like I guess aggro players will overtrade, or mid-range players they tend to overtrade because they think that they have to keep their board, and then they'll lose like 6 or 7 damage where they could have had lethal the next turn, where their opponent's like next best play wouldn't actually kill them, and then they'd be a few off. This is where the people who play a lot of decks also can thrive, is they know exactly breakpoints of like combo decks or control points, or like where their opponent could do. And yeah, so I just giving yourself a checklist every game, just walking through the steps of a turn, and then just deciding if I can set up 2 turn, if I can kill them this turn, and then just what's my opponent going to do, and that's where a lot of hand rating comes in. Again, high level play. If you're at that point, hand reading is really important if you can get there. But again, it's a lot to think about in a turn where Hearthstone is a very tough game sometimes. So yeah, I just like to break it down into a checklist.
And some of the things you do need to do is count lethal not on your turn. So you only have 2 minutes or whatever it is, 180 seconds. I don't even know, but it's like only a little while until the rope starts to burn. And sometimes if you're counting in that turn, especially if you're playing something complicated like an owl druid or something like that, or maybe some deck that you'll have to do some funky math to figure out how you get there, you do it early, otherwise you don't get there. I got a little shy for a while about pushing damage because I went through a phase where I would say, all right, I'm going to go in, and I get them down to like 2 health. And then the next turn they were at 30 and I just lost my advantage. So I kind of got to a point where I'm like, hey, I'm not going to go all in until I have lethal. And it's a balance there, right? Because sometimes you have to know what your opponent's doing. You have to know, hey, if I get them down to two, can they recover? And what do I think? It's turn six. I can get them down to 2 or 3 health. Can they get back from there? And if they can't get back from there, how much? And can I then go over the top? So there's a lot of just knowing matchups is huge. And once you, even if you have made the wrong decision early on, like, oh, I thought they were a Murloc Paladin, but they're actually the Imbue Paladin, then the quicker you can make changes in your mindset and shift your approach. Don't stick to the same win condition. Reevaluate your win condition. Okay, it's not this, it's this. How do I win? You asked it at the beginning of the game. You may ask it on turn 2. Some decks you don't know what they're playing until turn 3 or 4 or 5 because a lot of the early cards are just good cards and they play them regardless. So it's keep an open mind. Always be thinking and try to think more than just one turn. Like,
yeah, the best advice I give when I coach is the turn doesn't, like, you don't stop thinking when you hit the end turn, right? Like, you might have your 90 seconds, but you also have your opponent's 90 seconds to think. So once they start playing cards, you get to think about, hey, this is what I'm going to do while they're doing their thing. And then I really struggled with this with Cycle Rogue because they're just going to sit there and play 30 cards, and then I just space out, and then I'll reevaluate when that happens. It's really bad because you need to be able to, like, take their 90 seconds as yours and basically think about what you're going to be doing next turn. What's the best draw off the top? Like, what could help you in this situation? And that all happens on their turn. And so that way it makes your turn a lot easier. And then you can think about the quick and easier things or the hard decision of trading or going face and stuff like that. But a lot of the macro can happen on the opponent's turn.
And I think something that's come up the last couple weeks is if they get their win condition and they get their big flashy, if they have a board full of minions and they find their Crusader aura, you're going to lose in that case, right? If you get there. So how do you win? Like, you don't win if they have that. So make them have it. And the only way you're going to win is do something different, not react to the fact that they might have it. Like, maybe it's clearing their board because you can, or maybe it's pushing that damage and ignoring what they have, because if you can't clear enough and they're still going, if they have 7 minions and if they play Crusader Aura and they're going to win that game on the next turn, then if they could still do the same with 4 minions that next turn, then there's no point in clearing those 3 minions if there's a better thing to do. Now, if that's the only thing you can do, maybe that's what you do. But you got to really kind of think about what their big plays are, what your big plays are, and don't always just see how do I get around what they're going to do, because if they have it, they have it, and you're going to lose that game. You're going to lose 50% of your games or whatever it is, and you're going to win the other half. So think about how to just you just can't get upset or can't focus on if they have this. It doesn't matter what I do. So what matters what matters to the turn you're taking now? How do you take advantage of it, and how do you push forward and make them have to maybe react to you rather than you react to them? The more your opponent is reacting to you versus you reacting to them, you're going to be in a better spot.
Yeah, and especially when you're in those spots to where, you know, you're facing down lethal, you have a way to possibly prevent it, you know, unless they have this type of thing. A lot of times when I'm facing that, if I can set it up to where they have to have exactly 2 cards to do it instead of 1 card, I'll do that, to where they need Crusader's Aura and they need Hand of It All, or they need a weapon or something like that, to where now that's a little bit smaller box that they have, to where, you know, if it's only Crusader's Aura that they have to have, there's no way I can get around that. Whatever, it all goes face. It is what it is. But if I can set up to where it's just like, okay, I'm at 18. If they play Crusader's Aura, they have 16 damage. They need something else. Let's make them have that. And then I can, you know, set up whatever I need to next. And that's where, as someone who plays a lot of different decks, I know a lot of those breakpoints because I've played most of the decks, and I can see, I know for, you know, if it's a control class, I know these are the clears that they have on these turns, and you can plan around those so that you don't go in an aggressive matchup. You play little boards, you know, 1 minion, 1 minion, 1 minion, and then you go all in on turn 5, and then it gets brawled, or corpse explosion, or whatever it is. You kind of know, okay, they probably had brawl coming up. They have that card that they kept in the mulligan, knowing that I'm probably aggressive. Maybe I half commit to this board. and now I have a follow up for next turn when they don't have the first brawl or whatever it is anymore. And you kind of know those common things that they're going to have. Or if you're facing combo, what are the breakpoints, not just for damage, but for mana for what they need to do. If you're playing against a druid, do they have to have owl plus these things? What mana do they need to do that thing to finally get there, and how much damage is that, to where, especially if you're a control or an armor class, can you set yourself up to where, well, they had it and now they don't because I just got 20 armor as a warlock because I did eternal layover shenanigans, things like that.
And it's also just like it's anticipating, right? Like you were saying. So if you're playing quest warrior or some kind of warrior and you're playing against a owl druid, for example, they could have nothing on their board. You could have full health and some armor, and you know that they're just itching to do their thing, and you don't have the dirty rat, you don't have whatever. So brawl in your hand ain't gonna do anything at that point, whatever. So maybe it's time to play the bulwark. Like, yeah, I mean, could you? eh, I could be in that particular case. I have a bunch of cards I could play. Maybe I could try to be aggressive, put a board out there, and all that. But if you know that, hey, this is turn 8, this is they've played this card, they played this card. I know that they've set themselves up. So if they have it, then maybe I can stall them so I can come up with a better game plan. And that might not work either. You could say, well, if they have it, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do, even if they have the bulwark down. So maybe then is when you play a bunch of minions and try to pressure them because maybe they can't get you down on that first turn. You never know. Never just give up, because unless you know for sure that there's nothing you can do, if you look at the cards that you have in your list and say, okay, there's nothing I can do here, that those games bottom right. But if you're not 100% sure that they have what they need, stay in, because oh, they could have patched. They could have drawn patches. They could have done any number of things where you're just waiting for the play that they're going to make, and they can't do it because it's still in their deck or whatever. Salt, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of it is just I like to be the proactive person on the board. The more you're being proactive, the more you're the one in the driver's seat, the more you give your opponent to misplay. And then that kind of leads. And then once they give you like that misplay, the game's pretty much over. Again, being able to see that and not misplaying yourself is a very different story. But like when me and Tito played, like we played a game for Warrior versus Druid. I should have lost, but a lot of the onus was on him to mess it up, and he did. And again, it's just learning the deck, and like again, that's just you'll see it the more you play the deck, especially when you're playing Spell Druid. It's probably one of the harder decks in the game unless you hit 3 on 4. But even then, doing the combo, it took me probably about 30 games to learn the combo to do it properly, and that's in top 100, like high level Hearthstone. Um, Again, it's just the more you get to put your opponent on the play to misplay, you will win a lot more games.
You know how else you win a lot more games? I don't know. Maybe get two adversils, however you say the stupid druid things, like you did in that game
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
That hurt.
Yeah, I like Saltman, how you mentioned like the checklist. That's definitely kind of how I think about things too. Of check for lethal, especially once you get to a certain point, and then I kind of always have the next two that I'm looking at going hand in hand of what are the best plays that I can make, and which of those are most awkward for my opponent to deal with. How can I make my opponent's life miserable and the most awkward as possible if they're having to respond to me, and then finding what the best play is relating to both of those is how the way that I think about it a lot, especially playing into like control or something like that.
You can really make them think too, right? Like you can not have the thing you need, and then you can still fake like you have the thing you need, and that also kind of can help too, right? Like you can play Shutter Block, and they were like, "Oh no, here comes the Shutter Block turn," but you really don't have any other minions in your hand. You're just like, "Well, it's a good temple play, and I'm ready if I draw something." But that also might make them, well, okay, now I have to do things differently because they're about to do whatever that deck does with Shutter Block. So you can be crafty.
Yeah, I did that versus Gamer RVG. I tempoed an owl on 7. made it very awkward for him, and then I killed him the next turn. You can definitely do a lot of weird things, and your opponent will look at you like you're crazy, and then make a very awkward play, and then you beat them the next turn.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just all about bluffing, and that's what makes Hearthstone super hard as a game, and why you can like. There's a big difference between top 100 and a D5 player. Uh, even top 1000 to top
Yeah.
100, there's a very big skill gap. But again, it's just a lot of learning, and that's what makes this game super fun and super innovating. Is you can do a lot of weird things. Like Jambra plays the weirdest decks ever, and he's top 100 all the time. Because he just makes your like you just wonder what he's doing, and yeah, it just makes it fun.
And one thing about kind of what you just said too is learning. And if you play a matchup, and this happens to me fairly often, or has happened to me in the fairly often, not as much recently, but if you are playing your deck and every time you run into this other particular deck, you lose. And you're like, well, how do I beat that? And even if you might even be favored, unfavored, it doesn't matter. You'd be like, I can't figure out how to beat this. Play the other deck because you will face the opposite matchup and you will learn how you lose because you will lose and be like, oh, that's how I'm supposed to win this matchup. So definitely, unless you have 80,000 wins in a particular class and plan on doing that all the time, play other classes, play the decks that are beating you, and just enough to understand them.
Yep. And your opponents will misplay at times. I distinctly remember, I think it was last month, I had a game. I was playing against a paladin that had lethal on board twice, and they missed it. They missed lethal on board 2 turns in a row because I just played out minions and said, I don't know, maybe they don't count. And they didn't. They started trading. I'm like, okay, I don't have to hit the button yet. And I did it again, and they traded again. And then the third time they figured it out because I ran out of stuff. So sometimes, don't hit the button, make them figure it out. So if you are someone who miscounts like that and use deck tracker, have the little number on the bottom. That's what I do. It makes counting so much easier. So I have the option on to tell me how much attack I have on board, so I don't have to worry about counting that as quickly.
One of my favorite games that I won was a game I should have lost because I was sitting there and it was a weapon rogue, and it was one of those things that they had to do the big combo and do all the cards, and I just sat there. I'm like, oh, I'm probably gonna lose, but it's okay. And I'm like, oh, they got there, and I saw the number, and they did get the damage that they needed, and then the rope ended, and they never swung because they ran out of time. So one Leroy later, I won. So it's just even if you sometimes you're in the wrong mental state and you're just like, oh, of course they have that card. Of course I get Theotard. Of course, they played this because they of course if you're in the of course phase of playing Hearthstone or oh, obviously they have that card, step away because if you can't sit there and let them do their turn and win, and yeah, squelch them if you have to, because if they're going, well played, then yeah, you don't want to listen to that. So squelch them, but at the same point, let them take the only time I bottom right when I know that they have lethal is if they start doing like a million other things just to show that they can do a million other things. Then I get out of the game because I know they're just step in front and whatever you want to call it. But yeah.
So we've talked a lot about kind of when we deviate from those plans. If we're in an aggro mirror, when do we try to slow the game down and control the board? If we're playing a control deck and we figured out, hey, this deck has a win condition that beats me every time if this game goes on too long, what we need to do for that, things like Wheel of Death, things like combo, all that. When you're in those games, how often are you re-evaluating to figure out if and when things have changed? Like, especially, I think the aggro mirrors are the ones that happens the most, because if you can get to a certain point, then you realize you're in the spot to where, okay, I've survived this wave. Now I can start to push and be the aggressor again and put them on the back foot. How often are you reevaluating that?
Almost every turn, especially in aggro mirrors. It's probably pretty hard to see because the first, I'd say about 5-6 turns, you're just fighting for board, and then figuring out when somebody has won the board is the hardest part, because the person who's won the board, they'll tend to overtrade a lot. and then they'll lose the game because they overtraded because they didn't realize that they won the board and they didn't have to fight for board anymore. They just had to swing face, and then your opponent is the one who has to answer the board. It's kind of the same thing in control mirrors as well, which is what makes them probably the hardest matchups in the game. Just because you're a control deck, so obviously like no one thinks that you're the aggressor, but somebody has to be the aggressor in the matchup. And you see it all the time in Starship DK. The ones who feel behind will launch their starship early, and then they'll get ahead, and then the person has to react to that starship, and then they have to launch their own, right? And then the opponent gets to answer it, and then it's a big swing of tempo, and then everyone's reacting, and then whoever, like when you come out of the outcome, and then the end, it's like you both got to a stalemate, and then it's kill jading comes down, and then it's just demon RNG. But you just it's a lot of understanding the game, and this is where replays come in handy a lot. Is I like to step away. Like when I start getting tilted, I'll just step away 5 minutes, grab water, and then I'll pull up a replay and try to look at it as objectively as possible. And I get to see my opponent's hand, which also makes it really hard because you can get really hindsighty. And then you start thinking about, hey, if my opponent did this like on this turn, and then I would have done this. It's really easy to see that, but sitting down with somebody or getting coaching or even just talking to a friend that knows the game a lot better, which is why THL is super nice. Because even we're coaching teammates who are probably worse players who don't have as much time as we do. And then you can sit down with them, look at a replay, and go through turns, and you get to see 2 points, and then you get to come to an agreement of what their best play would have been. And yeah, it's Hearthstone again is a very hard game. There's no easy right answer until you're at a high level where everybody's playing perfectly. Because the misplays can actually make you play worse or play better. And then you start thinking that those misplays are correct, and then you start playing a certain way. Again, it makes the game very hard. But yeah, there's just a bunch of different little things that go on throughout the game that make it very hard to evaluate in an overall like sense of an answer. But like you'll get a lot of it depends from high level players just because it does. But yeah, it's just understanding where you're at in a game state, but without being able to see a game state and then talking about it with somebody.
And if you're getting coaching, don't necessarily assume that your coach knows everything too, because it's a discussion. Is it you're having a talk? Like there's been plenty of times when I've had a coaching where it's been, hey, I don't like this play. And then you can say, well, this is why I did it. And then you guys talk about it. Say, actually, okay, I'm thinking about, oh no, maybe I do like that play.
Yeah,
And the other thing too with that is to always come up with a second option if you can. Say, even if you've already on the previous turn decided what you're doing, I'm going to play this card right now. Wait when you see what you draw, even if you can't play that card, then take another turn and say, I can play. I think this is the best play. What's another play I could make? And you might be justifying the play that you picked. Like, hey, yeah, I could play out this guy. What does that get me? Nothing. All right, my play is the right play. And I think that is also something that it's easy to do because easy to not do because I can tell you how many times that if I'm kind of in a mode, the opponent ends the turn and then my turn is click, 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 done. And it's been less than like 3 seconds. And I'm like, well, yes, that was the play I was going to make. That probably wasn't going to deviate, but I should have thought about it more. I should have taken a second and let that. But sometimes I feel like if you play quickly, it kind of can throw your opponent off too. If they kind of like, oh, I got to think again about my turn. So I don't know. But for the most part, try to think of a second line. And obviously, if you draw a card that you can play, how does that change anything? If it does, you got to kind of just keep that mentality.
Yeah, and I think especially for decks that I like to play, I really like decks. If I'm playing something aggressive, I really prefer decks that have something from hand, some sort of burn or over the top damage. And once you start to draw those cards, that's where you're really reevaluating because then it changes your clock a lot. And a lot of times it changes the clock in a way that the opponent won't notice unless you have to wait a couple turns and they can start to read your hand and they figure out they drew this card. They've played everything in their hand but this card. That's probably a fireball or something like that. That they're waiting for the right time to play, so I don't just heal it because I have a lifesteal minion on board or whatever. So being able to look at those, I remember I had couple weeks ago as a THL match. We got into as the Starship DK mirror. Both got to kill Jaden. I ended up way ahead health wise and was pushing damage and put them on the back foot. And I think I was holding a Doom Guard in hand. I was holding charge in hand. I'm just kind of waiting, kind of biding my time. I had the board, and then I got hit by gigantic lifesteal rushers 2 turns in a row and had to completely reevaluate. And I think I ended up conceding that game because they had more cards in hand. I'd run out of draw. I'm like, well, that I did the right thing, and it didn't work, and that happens sometimes, and that's okay. Open deck list is obviously a lot different because if your opponent's running tech cards. But how often on ladder are you considering tech cards? Are you considering dirty rats? Are you considering disruption? Things like that when you're playing on ladder, if you know that it's a archetype that sometimes runs it.
Not really. Dirty rat is the big one. I always think about dirty rat. But other than that, tech cards are tech cards. At the end of the day, I get steam cleanered a lot on ladder because I don't expect people to run steam cleaner, and then all of a sudden I shuffle my warrior quest stuff in, and then I get steam cleanered, and I'm very sad. But again, that happens. People run weird tech cards that don't make sense for 90% of the ladder, and then you lose to them, and then they probably lose 90% more games than you probably, and you're just the 10% that you just got steam cleanered and you lose. But if you're playing around tech cards, it better be a big one, like back in the day with Ooze as a very big one when Cobalt in the Catacombs was around. You really had to think about Ooze because that's when they were playing it. So yeah, Dirty Rat's the big one. A lot of people play Dirty Rat, but I wouldn't think to play around tech cards because they're bad most of the time.
I think the thing you got to think about in the context of game planning and matchups, what we were talking about, is that reevaluation. Is, hey, they just dirty ratted my owl. How do I win? Can I win? Like, what do I need to do now? Because it's very easy to throw up your hands and be like, oh, I guess I lose. But it's also potentially tempo if they don't clear it, right? So maybe they did the owl. They could. I don't get why people turn. I never get why people rat on turn 2, and then just like, oh hey, thank you for that ceaseless expanse that costs 150 mana less or whatever, 125 mana less. I will then run this into your face as much as I can. But you're going to play games where you lose the pieces that you're needing for your, even if it's not always the only win condition. You're like, oh, I need that owl, I need it to win. No, you don't. You can win without it. They've done something that has altered your game plan. Now you have to make an adjustment, and I think that's where the reevaluation comes in all the time too. It's just like, all right, this happened. It's not the end of the world most of the time. Sometimes it is if they could have. But one thing I was talking about, or thinking about, and this is kind of previous to the tech card. So I guess Kill Jaden's kind of a tech card in a way, right? It's kind of a uh, way to continue on the game outside of fatigue and all that. But I always struggle with, and maybe Saltman can help with this. When do you play your Kill Jaden in a mirror? Because if they've played their Kill Jaden, I always struggle with, well, do I play Mayan now? I have it in hand, but I'm also like, but I have all these cards in my deck that I want and I want to use, and they're kind of part of my game plan. And I think but if I don't play that Kill Jaden now and I don't get to the game plan that I need to, whatever, then I'm just behind and they're giving me 20/20 demons and I'm giving them 5/5 or 6/6 or whatever. So um, how do you decide something like that?
Yeah, it comes down. I guess Starship DK is always the big one, where people are like, "Why no KJ on 7?" But it comes down to your basically in the Starship DK mirror is Starship pieces. If you have a lot early, you kind of don't want to play your KJ, right? Because you want to find your removal pieces, and then you want to launch your Starship, and then make your opponent have the removal pieces. But you also can't wait forever on your KJ. I would say about +6/+6 is when you have to jam yours. Otherwise, you fall a little bit too far behind on stats. Um, but again, it's all just very, very complicated, and that's what makes control mirrors like. I hate control mirrors. I don't want to play control mirrors. But if I have to, it's just a lot of thinking about your opponent's hand. And again, this is where coaching or having somebody who's better than you teach you Going through replays and figuring out where those hard turns were and what you could have done differently, and always questioning why. Uh, this is something I do when I get coached or when I'm talking with somebody. I always ask why they're doing something, just to try to get their understanding. And then that helps me either reaffirm my thinking or change my thinking to play better. But yeah, that's just, it's always it depends. Um, and it all comes down to board state, hand state, game state. There's just a lot, but um, yeah, if you didn't draw a lot of starship pieces early, you just jam an early KJ, because then you're not playing starship DK. You have all your removal in hand, and then you're winning from that point, just because you have more removal, and then you'll have bigger set of minions, and then they can't win from there. But that's how I see it, and it's again just finding somebody to help you. That's how I learned, at least, or even going into streams and asking questions, not obnoxiously, but just try to be respectfully asking questions and trying to learn. That's just, at the end of the day, that's how you get better, is by learning and asking questions and not just being stuck on, I got high rolled because it's a card game and somebody drew better than you. Generally, you can find a way out, and yeah, and not hitting concede as often either. That's how I learned. I stopped hitting concede until I got to about top 200, and then I knew my opponents were going to lethal me, and then you start to get there. But yeah.
And one good thing too is to, when you do replays, and even if like you post in like a public Discord, be like, hey, what do people think about that? They're going to tell you you were wrong on certain things. Like, hey, you made the wrong play here. They're not insulting you. They're not saying, hey, you're dumb. They're saying this was the wrong, you were asking for help, and they're saying this is the wrong play and you need to not, because I've seen often when someone's like, you should have played your on turn 5 instead of Crystal. It's like, no, I did this because of this, that, and the other. You're trying to justify the decisions you made, and you may have made the right decision, you may have not, but what you are trying to do is have a discussion. So you can say, my thought process here was I played this because then I have then two more star pieces the next turn, and then I can exit R, and this is what I want to do. Where the argument is, yeah, but you could have just had 5 armor and another card, and your opponent wasn't threatening you at the time, so that was a better time to play it. You can have a good conversation about these things, but you can't get defensive. You can't feel like somebody is trying to get you, because they're not. They're, everyone on the community, for just about anyone, if they're in the replay channel and they're talking to you, they probably want to help you get better.
Yeah, definitely. And to kind of wrap up the topic here, we've definitely had a lot of it depends that we've talked about today, and that's normal for something like this, because every single matchup, every single game, even if it's the same matchup, is going to be a little bit different. And this is where a lot of the skills that we've talked about in previous episodes on the podcast kind of all come together, to where you're relying on knowing your deck, you're relying on hand reading, you're relying on matchup knowledge, you're relying on so many different skills to be able to make these decisions in the best way possible, and then being able to constantly look at them again and figure out, how can I set myself up best to win this game based on the information that we have in front of us. I think the biggest takeaway for me, and it's something that I'm normally good at, sometimes depends on how many other tabs I have open or screens I have up, is using your opponent's turn, because that's one benefit I think Hearthstone has compared to other card games, of we don't have to do anything on our opponent's turns. We can't interact with any cards that they're playing. We can't play cards. We can't stop, play other cards to stop what they're doing. We don't have to think about, oh, they did this. Do I want to do and activate this card? There's none of that in this game, which means, yeah, you're watching what they're doing, but you have that entire time to think about what you're going to do on your turn, and not actually having to do anything in the moment. And it gives you so much more time to think ahead.
Yeah, I need to get better at that for sure. I definitely kind of go other directions while I'm waiting for my opponent, and just like when they're playing. If it's Psycho Rogue, I am tuned totally out. It's okay. What do we got? You got any final thoughts there, Salt?
There we go.
Yeah, it's just a hard game. So understanding, just being able to sit down and really go through replays and be objective with yourself. It's really hard. It took me a bit to learn, and I needed somebody there with me. But once you start to understand the game and the fundamentals, which this podcast helps a lot with, um, you'll honestly start getting better. You'll start seeing yourself improve, and eventually you'll get to the goals that you want to get to. As long as you can just be objective with yourself.
Fair. Pilot, any final thoughts before we move on?
No, I think that covered everything that I had in mind.
All right. So salt. I'm assuming that your favorite dessert might have some kind of salt in it, maybe a margarita or something. But what is your favorite dessert?
My favorite dessert is a raspberry cheesecake. Actually, I'm not a big dessert person, but yeah, I'm always down for a good raspberry cheesecake.
All right. It's good. It's a good choice. I don't really like raspberries, but that's just me. I don't eat a lot of fruit. That's just me too. um, if you'd like to support the show, we have a Patreon at patreon.com slash bread and butter HS. That's N, not AND. I'd like to welcome our newest patron, Joltik. Joltik, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. Yeah, you get access to our members channel Discord, where you can get to the Discord anyway, but we have a special channel for the Patreons that get to interact with people like Saltman if they want to and ask questions and whatnot. Yeah, and you can also help the show. We'll let you know who's the guests coming on in the future if we can. And if you want to ask, like you find out, hey, you guys are going to have Zeddy on next week. Can you ask him this? And if we can work it in, we will. So lots of good things there. And you get the raw audio right away. I know I like listening to Coin Concede, and I don't want to wait till Sunday because by then things have changed. So I like that I get the audio on Friday where I get to listen to it. So I'm a big fan of raw audio. Yes, you get some coughing and you get some crosstalk and whatnot, but I like getting things closer to when they've been announced or when they have been recorded than later if I can possibly help it. Uh, Saltman, where can people find you on social media?
I'm not really on social media, but my Discord Saltman112 if you want to reach out. I also do Metafy coaching, but yeah, and I'm usually in Twitch channels talking. But big one if you ever want to reach out, ask about replays or anything. I'm generally around on Discord. My job is pretty simple, so I'm on Discord a lot. So yeah.
And definitely take him up on coaching if you're looking for coaching. I recommend it. I think we've talked about it several times today. Coaching is good if that's something that you want to invest in your if you're playing 30, 40, 50 hours of Hearthstone in a month, having a little extra help isn't the worst thing. So just think about that. Pilot, where can people find you?
You can mainly find me on Discord, Pilot712. That's Pylet. You can also find me on Twitter at the same handle, and then lurking in a couple streams here and there.
And you can find me at Tito Santana HS on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and wherever other fine Italian goods are sold. You will see more content from us coming in the future. We are getting some clips and stuff going out there. So hopefully, have a little bit more to look at there. Saltman, do you have anything you'd like to promote or shout out this week?
I'll be streaming playoffs. If you want to watch some high level rage and getting tilted at some bad draws, I will be streaming my playoffs run. Probably just going 0-2 and dropping, but we'll see.
And what is your Twitch?
Twitch.tv/Saltman112, and I will probably bring a very spicy lineup that most people won't be bringing. So if you want to see some interesting decks.
How about yourself, Pilot? You got anything you'd like to promote or shout out this week?
I'm gonna shout out a couple other creators who talked about some things recently that we have. I know Coin Concede, they focused their episode that was just released today on the dual class tavern brawl. So if you're looking for ideas, you can go there. And then Clark Hellscream put out a video. It's been a couple days now, but a really interesting video on kind of just the state of Hearthstone and the discourse in general. That was a really good and I thought nuanced listen to it. So shout out to them and definitely worth checking out if you're interested.
All right. And I had a shout out and I completely forgot what it was because I didn't write it down and I never updated the show notes because it still has the last one. So I'm just going to shout out you, dear listener. Welcome if you're new. Thank you for staying if you're old. And if there's anybody you'd like us to have on as a guest, let us know. If we have already had them on, we can ask them back. If we've never had them on, we might have already asked them and they've said no, but we can try again and say, people really want you back on. So thank you for listening. And it's been great. It's been a lot of fun. But I think we're toast. We'll see you.
See ya.
See ya.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.